I took a year-long break from creating videos for my channel, and somehow, naturally, that meant I took a year-long break from decluttering, and so some spaces in my house have become a little bit chaotic. As they seem to, our garage has become a bit of an untidy space, and I think that's quite natural. It is almost the space where we all come to kind of put those bits that don't have a home throughout the rest of the house in order to keep the rest of the house quite functional and tidy. We've had a big DIY project on the go which did take us 5 months, and so this very much became a working area, and what has been left is tools that haven't been put away in their correct place or never had a place to begin with. We've got leftover resources which could be used for a future project that we didn't want to waste and get rid of. As well as with Tom moving in, some of his bits and bobs are in here just as a temporary holding place until we work out where we want to put them. And so it has become very cluttered in here. I also have this set of drawers here, which I know has leftover bits and bobs from the last time I did a car boot, and these were the things that didn't sell. I've kind of got to decide if I want to have one last shot at getting rid of them or if they're just not going to. And hello, what are you doing? And if it's time for them to leave. And then of course I've got my buns in here, and their setup was temporarily reduced whilst we had our DIY project going on. They've still got enough space. They've got a hutch, an attached run, and this space in front of them as well to run around, but I would like to be able to completely take off the limit at the front so they've got the entire space to have to run around, and so they're not as restricted because it is what they used to have, and we just sort of fenced them in a little bit for their own safety whilst we had bits and bobs in here that they would not be safe just running around. So it would be nice to give them their space back. So with all that in mind, there's a bit of a project to take on. I also want to decobweb because we're getting into early spider season, and if I can minimise that as much as possible. But if I do scream at any point, you'll know why. Let's go. Tom has just helped me rearrange some of the furniture in here. So this is going to act as a partial barrier. So this is as far as the buns will be able to get up, and then these drawers can still be used as storage. And then on the other side of here, which I don't know if you'll be able to see, granted is not very much room, is going to be what you can call sort of your typical garage space for storage of garagey things. And it is now a very small portion of the garage to give the space back to the buns because I want them to have the space back, and they're just so cute, so they win. Tom did ask me how are we going to fit all of that stuff back in that space, because I've moved it all out into the living room and kept it there just so it can be easier to sort through, and yeah, all of that won't fit there. So my thought process behind this is I can only fit in here what I can store in these drawers and the brown unit, which is currently just full of tins of paint at the minute. And so the solution is I can't keep anything that isn't essential or in the future will have some actual value that I'll get some use out of. And so I have actually got to be strict with this decluttering process. So my next job is to go through these drawers because this is actually quite a decent storage space. I'm going to jump in here next and see what I can get rid of and see what needs to be kept, and then I can start working on what I've actually got space for to move back in, and then start to think about what also needs to go. So I have a completely overflowing bag of bits to get rid of, so that's good, just that is less in here, things I don't need to keep. I've got badminton and tennis rackets. We already keep the badminton rackets we use on the regular under the stairs, so these might as well go with. And then I found some candy cane Christmas lights, which all our Christmas decorations are also in the cupboard under the stairs, so they can go there too. And then I've sort of half filled the bag of bits to keep to potentially carbu in the future. Next up, I've got this cupboard here, which is mostly full of paint and various tools and resources for DIY and sort of around the house jobs. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I have kept a lot of this thinking it'll be the sort of thing I'll get use out of in the future. But I think we all know after so long, paint starts to, I don't actually know what the word is, but it doesn't have the same effect and needs to go. And there are probably a lot of little knickknacks and tools and sort of screws, bolts, things like that I've sort of kept thinking eventually I'll get the use out of them. And I think now we've done a DIY project, I'll be in a better position to make an informed decision about what we are likely to use and unlikely to use. From that cupboard, I've managed to find a whole array, mainly paintings, and a few other bits and bobs that need to go. The thing I've got to be cautious of is that you can't just throw paintings out whether they're empty or partially empty. So I need to do my research on that to ensure that that gets done properly. An update on progress so far. I've managed to create this little nook which will effectively act as our garage. So sticking to the idea of you can only keep what stays within this space, we've pretty much managed it. And I think it's important to bear in mind that it is still acting as a garage, as a storage space, and there will be things that mean it cannot always be aesthetically pleasing unless you've got a highly functional, made to measure, designed for purpose garage. I think we're going to have this slight untidiness, but everything fits and everything now has its place. So I'll show you this bit first. You are currently in the doorway, so this is what you see as you come in. All of the things I felt were worth keeping now have a home of sorts. This is quite busy, but I now know where everything is, so I won't have to go searching for a particular item. If I'm looking for a tool like a screwdriver or something similar, a paintbrush, I've got all my loose paintbrushes here in this little basket. All the tools are here, so if ever I need to look for something, I only have to look here. I don't have to search the entire garage. And all paints and other products, including some car products and some gardening products, are all down here. So it might look like mayhem, but I now know where everything is. I've then created this walkthrough here by putting the two pieces of furniture, and that will then create a separation between the storage garage side of the room and then the space for my bunnies. And then that just means I need to fence off this little area to keep them separated. I've then currently just got all of their bits on here, as well as some other stuff still on top of their hutch that I need to sort out. I've not got around to that yet. We've then got each of these drawers. I was able to keep this entire one still for newspapers, even though that wasn't my original plan. I've then got two drawers for all the blankets and things we have kept after DIYing. So if ever we want to paint something again, we've got lots of coverings for floors. This one's a bit full. And furniture, so we've got all of those in there. In here I've just got a large bag I wanted to keep, purely just in case, don't come for me, and a really long extension cable which I use when using a lawnmower. Some potential future bunny bits in here. I've mentioned before I don't necessarily buy too many new items for my bunnies, but I do like to repurpose things I'm finished with. So there's a couple of cushions in here that they could eventually have. There's a picture frame here that it would be nice to brighten this area up a bit, so if I had a photo of them I could frame and pop on the walls, as well as a few spare flooring tiles, so if ever I want to use those I can. And at the moment, an empty drawer, which is always nice. And this side I've kept for all our power tools. So we've got a jigsaw in here. My toolbox is actually in this one. We've got a sander and a handheld drill in there. I've actually put some Wellingtons in that one. And a few gym bits in the bottom of that one, just because they really needed to be at the bottom because they're heavy. And so the last thing for me to do is go through all of the bits that are actually my bunnies bits. It's got very chaotic in here and is long overdue a tidy up. And then I'll go through and just make sure this area is completely safe and secure for them, and then I can remove this outer pen that they had before, and then they'll be able to access all of this space. So my next job is to make this nice for them. Finishing touches to the bunny section of the room. So I've cleared down everything on top of the hutch, just trying not to tread on little bunny toys. Now they've got all this space to themselves, everything is everywhere. So I've cleaned down the whole top of there so there's nothing on there, and you might just see I've left a box propped up at the corner. That's because we store a few boxes behind there for certain things, and I've left that propped up to remind me to tidy those out tomorrow, because Tom's going to help me because it is spider central back there, and so that's just a reminder to myself. The bunny bits are now on this shelf, and there is one above, but it's really just got an empty container, and they're two carry baskets for when they go to the vet. I then just put some pictures that hadn't sold at Car Boots on the wall, and they are not measured to perfection by any stretch, but they weren't selling at Car Boots. I was even doing these for £1 and they just weren't going. Maybe they're not to everyone's taste. And as a result, this one has got a little bit of dirt on, but I think I'll be able to get that off. And honestly, this sort of breeze block wall that I painted white years ago isn't the prettiest to look at. So anything to cover that up a little bit, but there's no theming whatsoever. It's a bit of a mismatch. And then something some of you might remember, and some of you will also laugh at the idea that I'm about to suggest. This canvas used to be on my bedroom wall, and it was just a very basic outline painting of Hawaii, and then later on, years later in fact, I glued my world map to it. So it was like a canvas backed map with the idea that I'd do the whole pins in the places I'd been to situation without having to buy an expensive pin board, because I already had this canvas and I already had just a poster of a world map. Never got round to doing that. It was one of those things where I was fickle again. So I pulled the map off a while ago and then just stored this big canvas in here because I didn't want it to go to waste, and quite honestly, that's not going to be too much of a challenge to cover. I know it's black, but it's mostly still a white canvas. So if I can pick all of this glue gun glue off, then I reckon that's a reusable canvas. And I know what you're thinking. I've been working on that waterfall that's not actually got any water painted on it for 3 years upstairs in my office, but I was also thinking, oh, I just hit the camera. But I was also thinking, how cute would a little bunny portrait be, big above their hutch? So that's a future Charlotte thing to deal with, but I thought that was quite a cute idea, and it uses up this canvas, which is otherwise sitting in here gathering dust. There are other things I'd like to do in here for my buns, just to make it a little bit better for them. Not necessarily to say that there's anything wrong. You know, they have hiding places. That's why I've kept the run. Tom did ask me, why have you kept the run if they've got the whole space? Because sometimes they just like to feel safe. And so I've kept the run, I've kept the hutch, so they have got hidey spaces that are spacious, where they can sort of go and feel like they're not out and exposed. You know, they've got their unlimited hay, they've got their food, they've got their water, they've got their toys, they've got their enrichment, and that's all very nice. A lot of their enrichment is quite old, so I feel like that could do with a spruce up, but you know what I'm like, I don't like to go over the top with this sort of thing. I like to keep it fairly minimal, functional. So I'm going to start looking into what I can do for that, just for their main care. But other than that, I think we are about done with the garage declutter and organisation. Very small garage storage section, big open bunny section, which is great. And they're currently just grooming each other, which is quite cute. And so I will wrap this video up here. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already, and I will see you in another video very soon. Until next time, take care.